Going for two, kickers are extra, I give them the boot. Ooh, going for two, sit back, relax while I grab me a brew. Ooh, now I'm reclining while putting my time and I'm ready to go. My spine is aligning and much my lineups, my bank account grow. I am so rich, but knowledge is all that I'm leaving it with. Ooh, listen to this, multiple options, how far can I get? Ooh, DFS Dynasty redraft tonight, I'm not finishing last. I'm finishing past any and all, I am looking to last. What else? This spot is popping and I am so locked in and only opening the door when it is opportunity knocking. And all of these spots keep on talking and talking. So what are we talking? What kind of alignment? And running it deep, even players forgotten or came from the bottom or hitting that top. And this spot is popping, yeah, this spot is popping. And woo! This is the Armchair, yeah. Put up your arms, yeah. Sound the alarm, yeah, yeah, yeah. Woo!
What is going on, guys? Welcome to episode 359 of the Armchair Fantasy Show. I'm your host, of course, Geoff Lambert. You can follow me on Twitter at JeoffLambert77. Of course, we're live every Friday, but tonight is a special night. It is Wednesday. It is the day before Thanksgiving. It is our special Thanksgiving show. Of course, we're on the Going for Two Live podcast network on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. We're on Facebook Live, and you can find us also at goingfor2.live. Has all of our audio and video stuff there. And of course, we're on all major podcast networks. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. Really helps us out. We finally made partner for the YouTube channel. So we appreciate everybody jumping in and jumping in the chat. Philip, we see you in the chat, man. Glad to have you. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well, sir. I'm here as always with my co-host, Mr. Tim Strobel. What's up, Tim?
Oh, Jeff, I'm coming off a good week. You know I love the Thanksgiving show. It's one of my favorite shows we do all year. So I'm ready to get going, man. Happy to have Garrett back in studio as well.
Absolutely. Garrett, of course, is from the DFS Roundtable on Facebook with me and Tim. And if you didn't know, he won $100,000 in week one. He's a longtime listener of the show. You figure you won $100K, we could bring you on the show a couple times a year. So, Garrett, what's up, man?
What's up, man? Just grateful to be here. Thank you, guys. Yeah, man, I'm just thankful to be here, man.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And thank you for coming on, man. I know you're at the hotel right now. You're not in the comfort of your own home, but you found a way to make it work. And we appreciate you coming on, man.
Roger.
All right. So if you haven't been listening to the show, we are running our DFS for Toys DraftKings tournament. Of course, it is for tomorrow. So if you've already registered and you did not get your invite, go check your email, go check your Facebook or your DraftKings app to make sure you get the invite. If for some reason you did not get it or you cannot find it, please DM me either on Facebook or Twitter or wherever you follow me. I can get you that link to make sure you get in there because, of course, it does lock tomorrow at 12:30 for the first game, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are giving away the belt. I'm going to show the belt one last time. There's the belt there. That's the belt we are giving away. So if you are not in the contest, it's still time to join, but you're going to have to DM me at this point. I can give you the URL, but if you go to that and use the URL, it'll be too late for you to get in. So just DM me on Twitter, Facebook, wherever you follow me at. I can still get you into the tournament. I think we currently have, 50 plus people in the tournament right now. I think 60 people are registered. I can still get you in. I don't know what that. Someone had some feedback there for a second.
Okay, yeah, that was me. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. All right, guys, we have a big show to get to. Of course, we're going to cover the Thanksgiving slate, the 3 games, and then we're also going to cover the main slate like we always do. Let's go ahead and get to the rewind.
The weekly rewind. Rewind.
All right, Garrett, we'll go to you first here. Give us your rewind, your one good, one bad for the week.
Yeah, my one good was Fields DJ Moore stack. I ran it back with Amon-Ra. They got me almost 70 points between the 3. But my bad was my running backs. Derrick Henry and Aaron Jones killed me. A combined 8 points between the two. It just wasn't going to get there. So,
brutal.
Yeah, it was awful.
Tim, what you got for your one good, one bad?
Yeah, my one good last week was Tyreek Hill. He was my lock of the week. I had to get him in my cash lineup. And as I said in the pre-show, forcing in Tyreek got me on Singletary and Robinson, which obviously worked out to be kind of the optimal lineup in cash. So that worked out really well. Unfortunately, in tournaments, I had a lot of Devon Achane. who obviously, went out after a couple plays. So that did not work out so well. But I still managed to cast one GPP even with Achane in it. So that tells you we were on it last week.
Definitely.
We had a killer show last week, just top to bottom, by the way.
Absolutely. So my one good, and I talked about it in the last couple of shows, the guy with the 100 matchup on FTN, I played in the last 2 weeks. It was CeeDee Lamb 2 weeks ago. Last week I called out Brandon Ayuk. I called it Brandon Ayuk week. I think Deebo Samuel was higher owned. So everybody that, played Ayuk, listened to the show, worked out very well for you. He crushed it, of course, last week. My one bad was ETN. He just, I guess Trevor Lawrence decided, you know what, I'm just going to run these two in myself. So the 2 touchdowns that should have gone to ETN was to Trevor Lawrence instead, and kind of crushed ETN's hopes of smashing the slate. So he kind of killed my cash lineup. Unfortunately, I did not cash my cash lineup. Only the second time all year my cash lineup has not hit. Luckily, I had some good GPP lineups that kind of saved me a little bit, but my cash lineup missed last week. All right, let's jump into the Thanksgiving slate. We do this a little bit different than we do the main slate. We're going to go game by game, just talk about a couple different plays at each game. We'll kick it off, of course, with the early game, Green Bay at Detroit. The current over-under is at 47. Detroit is favored by 7.5 points last time I checked it. And Tim, we'll start off here with you. What kind of plays are you looking for in this game?
Yeah, I think the first place I'm looking in this game is the running backs for Detroit. I said it, when it was Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren week, and I said it last week with Eckler, even though he didn't have a great game. But you attack Green Bay with your running backs, right? That's where they struggle, is up the middle, and it's Jahmyr Gibbs, man. I'm all over Jahmyr Gibbs. I was really worried that when David Montgomery came back, that he was going to go right back to his lead dog role. But the last 2 weeks, Gibbs has played 58% of snaps, and he's gotten more work inside the red zone. So that's what you're looking for. If he's getting the volume, the red zone, and the catches, that's your perfect prescription for a DraftKings running back. So he'll be popular, but I'm all over Gibbs.
Good stuff. Speaking of running backs, Tim, I wanted to ask you as the resident Packers fan here. So there, we know that Jones is not going to play. It's going to be A.J. Dillon. The third string running back, the rookie, I can't think of his name, has also been ruled out. He's on IR. So there's 2 running backs that are on the depth chart. One of them is on the DraftKings slate. One of them is not. Patrick Taylor at, I think, 4,200. And then they also activated James Robinson.
I heard that.
Is Patrick Taylor usable at all as the number 2?
No, not in my mind. I mean, he has no ceiling, and that's really my thought on it. Like, even if he gets you a short goal line touchdown, like he could maybe get you like 9 or 10 points, right? He's 4,200. Maybe in showdown, like if you were playing showdown and you need that 10 points to make a difference. But on the 3-game slate, I don't think you play Taylor. I think there's better things to do for that cash.
Yeah, I think I'm with you as well. I think even the fact that they're the only running backs on the team right now, I think you're going to play Dillon. If you're going to play a Green Bay running back, you're going to play Dillon. I don't know if you're playing a Green Bay.
Yeah, and it's really just such a bad matchup, right? I mean, Detroit's one of the best 8th DVOA against the run, so it just doesn't set up well. I fully expect AJ Dillon to be popular, but he very well could score 12 points, right? Yeah. There's a value running back later on in the slate we're going to talk about. I think is the better play.
Agreed. Garrett, what you got for some of your plays in this game?
Man, I like the entire Detroit offense. Just to be honest with
everybody,
you. All their big guys, man. Goff, Gibbs, Mott. I could see this being a slate where 2 running backs from this team get you there, and then you build around it, and it just being one of those weird builds where you got 2 running backs from the same team. They've been doing well together, even though I do think Gibbs is kind of taking over a little bit more, as he should. I think he's the more dynamic player. And then from the Green Bay side, man, not a lot. Dobbs here and there where you need him. And then I like Jay Reed, their wide receiver. I think he may be the best receiver on their team.
Yeah, right. No, I think the big news in Green Bay this week is all the injuries, right? They have multiple people declared out. Aaron Jones is out. Safety Darnell Savage is out. Both tight ends are probably going to be out. Musgrave has already been put on IR, and DeGuara is doubtful. So I think one of the best plays in this game is going to be Tucker Kraft, right? And I think he's going to be really popular because he's Stoneman priced at 2,500. But we'll talk about it later. There are a couple of guys that I think you have to play on this slate, particularly if you're playing cash games. And I think to get there, you're going to have to pay down somewhere, right? So I think Reed is a great call. I played him last week. I'll play him again this week. But Tucker Kraft, I think, is an interesting play at 2,500.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all over Kraft as well. At his price point, you can't really ignore how cheap he is, and he allows you to get some of those more expensive guys that we'll talk about here in a minute. There's one other play, Tim, and I noticed you had him on your thing as well. Another good punt, Mr. Jamison Williams at 3.4. I think he played 80+% of the snaps. He only had 3 targets, but luckily one of them was a touchdown last week. Talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, I had it at 65%. I can double check that real quick. But
you might be right.
Yeah, earlier in the season, he wasn't playing very many snaps at all, consistently around 40%. Week 10, 52%. Week 11, 65%. So he's trending in the right direction. And he's the kind of profile that you're looking for a punt play, right? Where he can score on one long touchdown, and that's the guy you got to have. One of the interesting things for me is that Amon-Ra St. Brown has not been very good against Green Bay. His last 3 games against Green Bay, he's averaged 12.3 DraftKings points. So I think they know the way that they win this game is on the ground. And so it's going to be really hard for me to pay for Amon-Ra on this slate. Now, obviously, if you're doing golf stacks, I think that's where you start. But particularly in cash games, I'm not considering the Sun God this week.
Yeah, I'm
also not really huge on Laporta. I saw a stat that when both running backs have been healthy, they have one of the lowest pass rates in the entire league. So I think that continues this week. Again, good GPP play, not for me in cash.
All right, and let's talk about defense really quick. And I noticed, Garrett, you had the Lions defense listed on your sheet there. I think there's one defense that we can all pretty much assume is going to be one of the higher owned ones. And it's the most expensive one on the slate. But the Lions got a pretty good defense as well. Talk about them a little bit.
Yeah, I just had them on there, man, because of all the injuries to Green Bay. And, I think to get away from the Cowboys and 49ers, you're either going to go up top or you're probably going to punt down below Detroit. And they could get overlooked and do some damage. Man, real quick, can I give a shout out to my wife? She's watching, and my family real quick.
Of course.
I love you guys. Amanda, kids, I love y'all. Thanks for watching.
That's awesome. I love it.
There you go.
So the defense, you're right. They're right there in the middle, and they're going to be overlooked. Either you're going to punt the defense or you're going to pay up for those 2 you mentioned, and the Lions might go overlooked here. And I think they're in a good spot at a pretty good price as well.
Definitely.
I agree. Yeah, particularly if you're going to run one of those double Lions running back type GPP lineups, I think you're doing that with the Lions defense.
Yeah.
Because you're saying they get up early and just run the clock out.
All right, let's move to game number 2 here.
Hey, the only other person I want to mention, because nobody mentioned him, was Christian Watson. I think he'll be pretty popular on this slate because he finally scored a touchdown last week. But I put that he feels like bait, right? Like they put him at 4,300 to try and bait you into playing him.
Yeah.
But as Garrett said earlier, I think Jaden Reed is clearly the one who looks like he has the best connection with Christian Watson, with Jordan Love right now. So I'll take my chances on probably fading Watson, but that price is so tempting, man.
Yeah.
Agreed.
100%. All right, let's move into game number 2, Washington at Dallas. This one has the highest over-under on the slate at 48.5. Dallas is favored by a whopping 11 points.
Yeah.
Garrett, let me go to you. Give me some of your
it's actually up to 13.5, by the way.
Wow.
Sheesh.
That is crazy.
I now have it at 13.5.
Garrett, give me some of your plays here.
Yeah, once again, man, the whole offense of Dallas, Dak, Lamb, except Pollard, man. I'm not playing Pollard. He's probably been the biggest bust of the season, if you ask me. Considering how high he got picked in some people's fantasy year longs, but man, definitely Dak, Lamb, Ferguson, sprinkle in some Cooks, and then the defense could,
what up, G?
really hurt Washington if they tee off right. So,
yeah, 100%. And I have Curtis Samuel as a sneaky play. He had 3.6. He got ejected the last game, so those the box score watchers are going to look at that and think that he's not doing well. He actually was going to get involved in that game and then wasn't. They could use him in a sneaky way in Dallas at 3.6 if you want to get a little weird at some GPPs. But yeah, I think that the guys you want really are going to be on the offensive of the Cowboys there. And of course, you mentioned the defense. Tim, you have a tight end there that you think is too cheap for this slate.
Yeah, I really like Ferguson. I feel like it's a 2 tight end week. There's a lot of really good tight end plays on this slate, and I think value is kind of hard to come by. But first of all, I completely agree with Garrett. Dak and CD stack is basically the chalk. It's definitely where I think you want to go in cash. And I also agree on the Pollard fade. He scored last week, which means it's going to be another, 6 weeks until he scores again or something. But yeah, Dak stacks is where it's at this week for sure. They will be popular, so you will want to find a way to get different. One way to get different is by playing 2 tight ends. So I really like Ferguson. I think if you were to give the same value at same volume, if he was a wide receiver, he'd probably be about 5,500, and he's 3,900.
Yeah.
So I think in that case, he's too cheap.
Yeah, and speaking of Dak and Lamb, I know people that listened to the show the last 2 weeks. I've given the FTN the 100 matchup. Basically, they rate every matchup wide receiver, cornerback, and there's usually like 1, maybe 2 guys that get the 100% matchup. 2 weeks ago, it was CeeDee Lamb. I played him, called him out on the show. He balled out. Last week, it was Brandon Ayuk. Again, he balled out last week. This week's 100% matchup is going to be on Lamb. Again, so it's for second time in 3 weeks he's been the top matchup. So Lamb, if you're playing him in your lineups, obviously this is the the place that you're gonna stack Dak and Lamb and just build from there. I think that's where you start your lineups, is start with Dak and Lamb and just go from there.
I feel like we need a drop for that. The going for 2 matchup of the week.
Yeah, there you go. I'll work on that for sure.
I love it though. I when I looked at it the first time I looked at the slate, to me that was the no-brainer, right? Like, so one of the flowchart teams is the Commanders. The Cowboys have obviously been super pass heavy.
Yep.
And one thing I talked about last week is that they love blowing teams out. So I think it's very viable on this slate for you to play a Dak stack and then also play the defense.
Yeah.
Right. So I think some people will think, oh, well, if I'm playing the defense, I have to play Pollard and hope they run the ball. I don't think that's the case at all.
Yep.
So I like that call a lot.
The only other thing I had on here, because I live in the Washington, D.C. area, and the Commanders and the Cowboys tend to, when one of them is favored by 1 billion points, they always tend to have games that are much closer than they actually should be, especially on Thanksgiving. So if you wanted a leverage play, everyone's going to be on that passing attack of the Cowboys. They're going to be playing the Cowboys defense. A leverage play to get off of that would be to go with Brian Robinson at 5.9.
Yeah,
that's the way the Commanders are going to have to win this game, is to run the ball. He's been heavily involved in the passing game the last couple of weeks as well. So he has that floor with the catching ability. So at 5.9, if you want to get different in your tournament, I think Brian Robinson makes a pretty smart play.
Who's your favorite run back if say everything works out and Dallas is the way to go? Who's your favorite run back from Washington?
Probably McLaurin. That would be my guess. Dotson's
my answer would be depending if you're playing Ferguson, because like if you go Dak, Lamb, Cooks, I like Logan Thomas.
Okay.
Right, but if you're going Dak, Lamb, Ferguson, I don't know that I would go Ferguson and Logan Thomas. I'd probably go Samuel in that scenario or Brian Robinson.
Yeah,
Brian Robinson has been surprisingly getting a lot of volume in the air.
Yep.
Right. Everybody thought he was this Ezekiel Elliott, I go 3 yards and fall down kind of running back. That's not really been his role this year. He's getting more since Gibson's been banged up, but even before then, right, he's getting a lot of pass game work. And
he's been the guy that Howell's looked for on broken plays when he's scrambling around. He just seems to find Brian Robinson on those little short dump offs, and Robinson's been able to make happen of them. So yeah, he's definitely involved.
I think he probably has the highest ceiling if I had to pick a player.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking too, with Samuel or Robinson. So,
yeah.
Tim, you got a punt play there.
Yeah, just because I want to find one punt play from each of these games, right? If you're trying to find volume, you're going to have to pay down somewhere. Same kind of thing. I mentioned Jameson Williams in the first game, and this one's Jalen Tolbert. He's kind of the Cowboys' 4th receiver. But he's really been operating kind of as the number 3 over the last few games, getting more snaps and more targets than Michael Gallup. So if you only have 3,100 left and you need an absolute punt, I like Jalen Tolbert. He's not going to give you probably 20, but I don't think he'll give you a 0 either.
Yeah, good call. Anything else in this game before we get to the last game of the week or the
just try and find a way to play the defense. They have the number 1 sack rate on the week.
Yeah.
Obviously, they failed in the similar spot earlier this year, but I don't think there's so much of a gap over some of the other defenses that you can't try and find a way to the Cowboys.
Yeah, I think you get up to the Cowboys, hell and high water, you find a way to get there because Howell's still taking a ton of 2 sacks. So, All right, get into the last game here. Of course, it is San Francisco at Seattle. Over under is 43. 49ers favored by 7 points last time I checked it. This one's going to be an interesting one. There's some chalk plays in here and some chalk value plays as well, Tim. Talk about one of those guys.
Yeah, I think probably the chalkiest play on the slate possibly may end up being Zach Charbonnet with Kenneth Walker out with an oblique injury. He's doubtful, but he's out, right? He's not going to play. 5,300, that volume's just too good, right? And it's the same kind of thing I was just talking about Brian Robinson, is they like to use him in the pass game. So if this is a situation where they get behind, normally we don't like to play running backs against the 49ers because they're not going to get a lot of yards on the ground. But if you figure that he's going to get a lot of usage through the air, it could end up being a Devin Singletary spot like we saw last week, right? Where he just, he gets it on the ground and he gets it going through the air. So I think he's probably going to, like I said, super chalky. I actually kind of like a fade of him in tournaments. Like Garrett said earlier, I think if you want to do some, we'll talk about the other one here in a minute, but, like one of the Detroit running backs plus, this guy, you can get away from Charbonnet. But I think in cash, he's projected for me almost 3 times value, which kind of makes him a lock in cash game. So.
Yeah,
Unless something goes crazy, that's where I'm going.
I've talked about it all season, too. The Niners are good against the ground, against the running backs, but the pass catchers, they struggle against. I mean, Rachaad White last week had 7 catches, I believe. Joe Mixon the week before that, before our bye, had a really good game. Earlier in the season, Kyron Williams had a coming out party against us in week 2, I believe. I think Charbonnet is a pass catching running back, and he can definitely hurt us. So I like that call. Garrett, what do you got for your plays in this game?
Purdy, CMC, and Debo, the same stack I ran week before last, I believe, that won me a little bit of money. I like that, man. CMC's pretty good against Seattle from what I remember. He's pretty good against any damn body, so you can't go wrong there. And Seattle struggles against the run a little bit. We were talking earlier about Debo being in a good spot for this game, so I like it. And once again, you maybe play a little 49ers defense if you're playing a lot of mass injuries. That way you can diversify a little bit just in case they smash Seattle. Maybe the quarterback doesn't play or he's limited. Maybe Geno Smith's limited because of that elbow or shoulder injury, whatever he's got. So,
yep. Good call.
Yeah, I put on here that I think you have to play CMC and CeeDee Lamb, particularly if you're playing cash games. I think there's enough value to get to both. Average 26.7 DK points in his last 2 versus Seattle. Now, when you pay, that kind of price, that's what you're expecting. But, I think there's a gap between him and the next running back on this slate, right? And that's really what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So I was looking at some optimals, run the sim stuff earlier. He's in like 50% of all optimal lineups, right? So that just goes to show you that, he kind of gives you a ceiling than really anybody else. But, I played Purdy last week, right? I mentioned that at the top of the show. Purdy stacks were huge for me last week. I played a lot of Purdy and Ayuk. But in the pregame, I was telling you, Geoff, I think this week I'm going back to Debo. I had a stat here. Seattle is good versus number 1 wide receivers, but they're 30th to number 2 wide receivers. So I think, Ayuk may struggle a little bit this week. I actually expect him to be the higher owned one this week. So I'm going to pivot and go back to Debo.
Yeah, everyone's going to chase the points from last week. I think I agree with you. I had a value play from this game that we hadn't talked about yet. JSN, Jackson Smith, and Njigba has been really coming on strong lately.
Yeah.
And I mentioned on the show, even last week, I mentioned that we struggle versus receivers in the slot. Now, I called out Chris Godwin last week saying he'd have a good game. He did not. But he still has 6 catches, and he had a huge drop that would have given him at least 50 more yards. So his game would have been much better against us had he caught that pass. But we do struggle versus the slot, and JSN's playing, I think, 68% of his snaps are coming from the slot. So he's someone to look out. I think he's 4,100 on the slate, so that's a pretty good price to pay. And then, I called Ayuk week last week. I'm calling Kittle week this week. Kittle, for some reason, plays well, not only versus Seattle, but also in Seattle. He's played in Seattle since 2019. I think he's got 6 or 7 games against them through that time. He averages 7 targets, 5 catches, and nearly 100 yards versus them in Seattle. So I think Kittle's going to be huge this week as well, and he's I think 6,000, so he's a pretty expensive tight end, but he'll be worth it if you can find a way to get him in your lineup.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier I really like the 2 tight end this week. I think some of my favorite builds have been Ferguson and Kittle. So I think that's definitely one way to go this week if you want to get a little different.
Anybody else we didn't talk about y'all want to mention before we get to the main slate?
Yeah, I would imagine that would be real different too on a 3-game slate, man. I like that too.
Yep.
Yeah, and actually, I meant to say in the
Mhm.
first game too, when you mentioned playing both Detroit running backs, that's another way to get different is too. I don't think
Agreed.
people are going to pick one or the other. I think you play both and hope they both go off like they have in the last couple of games. So
that's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, you got to get different on these 3-game slates, right? Otherwise, you're going to dupe with 1,000 people. So, and the cash games, you don't care, right? You play the optimal, but in GPPs on a 3-game slate, if you don't want to dupe, you gotta get different.
Absolutely.
And we've seen it, right? We've seen 2 running backs on the same slate win before.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's a viable strategy, particularly if a team's going to run the ball 40 times.
100%. All right, that wraps up the Thanksgiving slate. We're going to jump now into the main slate. And obviously, we're doing this a few days earlier than we normally do. So there's some things that we may or may not know as far as injuries go yet. So we'll do our best to break it down. Let's go ahead and get to the quarterbacks.
Let's talk quarterbacks.
All right, right here at the top here, Tim, give me one of your elite quarterbacks.
Oh damn! I thought you were going to hit the double drop. I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'm going to go with Josh Allen. We always talk about the flow chart, right? And one of the flow chart teams is Philadelphia, right? Because they are a pass funnel, right? And Josh Allen coming off a tough game, they won, but he didn't have his best game. And I think this is a shot for him to really show out. It's a great matchup. It's the highest total on the main slate. And honestly, I think it's going to go over. Let me double check that. No, I'm sorry. Houston. What? Why is this not showing up for me? Yeah, they are 48.5. Yeah.
48.5,
So it came down 2 points and opened at 50.5. I think it's going to go over 50. Like if you're asking me what game on the main slate has the best chance of having a 60-point game, it's the Eagles and Bills for me.
Yep.
So common theme for the rest of the show is I'm going to be recommending a lot of Eagles and a lot of Bills. And I think that starts at the top with Josh Allen.
Yep, absolutely. And as Tim mentioned, there should have been a double drop, but I didn't see the lock of the week until just now. So now I'm going to hit it.
Lock it in.
All right, Garrett, your lock of the week.
CJ Stroud, man, the rookie of the year, maybe the MVP of the season. Who knows? I'm not missing on him this week, man. Last week I had him in. I had him, Dell, Tyreek Hill, and I switched to, I don't know why, but I switched to Fields last minute on everything. I let some ESPN reporter talk me into it. And it ended up, because of the running back situation, I ended up not doing as well as I would have. So I'm locking CJ Stroud in this week and Tank Dell, and I'm rolling with it.
Agreed.
I love it.
Yeah, I want to give a quick shout out. You guys know every year we do a draft show. And on the draft show this year, Courtney, who I believe had the #1 overall pick, said, I know everybody's going to take Bryce Young here, but I'm taking CJ Stroud. I think he'll be the better quarterback. If I was the Panthers, I would draft CJ Stroud. They should have listened to our draft show, okay? Yeah. Because CJ Stroud is absolutely balling, okay? And nobody cares about his S2 test anymore, right? Carolina owners like, oh, man, I fucked up. Like, it's going to be one of those look back, things where you're like, I can't believe CJ went second to Bryce. Yep. And at the time, it was like every expert was like, it's Bryce, it's Bryce, it's Bryce. Courtney was like,
you asked me, Carolina's got the better names, too, as far as positional players with Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard, Adam Thielen. Nobody knew who Nico Collins and Tank Dell was last year.
Yeah, they're all popular now, but they weren't popular before.
They were nobodies,
We had no idea who the #1 was. It was like, who's the receiver there? We have no idea. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, what Stroud is doing is amazing for anyone, but for him to be a rookie is just absolute insanity.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
All right. In the effort to save some time, Garrett had Mahomes and Hurts on his elite sheet as well. Of course, those guys can be put on the elite level all the time, so we don't need to talk you into those guys. Those guys are always in play. So I'll move down into the mid-tier. And I have Kyler Murray at 6.9 going up against the Rams. And really it comes down to his floor with the rushing ability. Over the last 2 weeks, he's got 13 rushes for 84 yards and 2 touchdowns in those 2 games, which gives you a solid floor for him to build upon. And, he's been doing it through the air as well. I did see that Hollywood Brown has an injury issue that he may or may not play, but even if he's out, I still think Kyler Murray is in play at 6.9. He should be up in that elite level. He's not quite there yet, but I do think that at 6.9, he's still too cheap. So I will have a lot of Kyler Murray in the mid-tier here. Tim, talk about the other mid-tier guy we have.
Yeah, the thing about I want to talk about Kyler Murray because he came back at 5,900. Then they made him 6,100. Now he's 6,900. DraftKings is like, you're not going to get me again, right? If he's going to run the ball 7 to 10 times a game, we're going to price him back like a running back. So I like that from DraftKings. I did list Trevor Lawrence. Right now, obviously, it's Wednesday. But as of today, it's looking like he's probably going to be the cash game quarterback, which I think is really interesting. Coming off that big 30-point game last week, he goes up against Houston. And one of the highest over-unders, I think it's tied for the highest on the slate. And yeah, he's 1,300 cheaper than CJ Stroud, right? So they're expecting this game to shoot out. I don't think it's going to be through the ground. I mean, ETN may have a good game, but I think if they get there, it's going to be through T-Law. And so I think he makes a good cash game play and a great tournament option. Though I will say he has not had 30-point games twice in a row. So I would be a little hesitant, but a matchup always wins over game log, right? And I think this is just such a good matchup.
I think T-Law kind of showed what he's capable of. We've kind of forgotten about T-Law almost in a way. Like, he has not had a good season. I thought he was going to have a close to MVP type season this year, and he has not had that by any means. But,
yeah, it's the magic of Zay Jones. All they needed was to get Zay Jones back. That was what was holding the whole team. So we just had no idea.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move down into the value tier. Mickey in the chat mentioned Russell Wilson. Are either of y'all interested at all in Russell Wilson?
No, but I like that call actually.
Yeah, he's definitely been playing better. That's for sure.
That's a tough defense to play again, man.
That's what I was going to say is I do not like that. They are the number one defense in terms of success rate and yards, basically in every position. So yeah, I don't know how I can play Russ this week. I tell you who I am going to play again this week, and that's Baker Mayfield. I love this matchup. Tampa Bay going into Indianapolis. Neither one of these teams can really stop anybody in the passing game. It's going to be a heavy pass game I expect from Baker, and he's been super consistent, right? And that's really what you're looking for. I don't know if I may end up going him in cash, but last week he had his worst week in 5 weeks. He played San Francisco, one of the best defenses in the league, and he still managed to get 12 DraftKings points, right? Which is not terrible. So if you look previous to that, 19, 19, 21, 17, I think for 5,500, that's what you're looking for. Yeah. So I think the other guy y'all have is going to be popular as well. But I think I might go back to Baker again, man. He's made me some money over the last few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And the matchup is definitely better than it was the week before that. So I have the quarterback on the other side, Gardner Minshew. Tampa Bay is just bleeding points right now in the passing game. We just saw Purdy light them up. They give up the third most points to quarterbacks overall. Minshew, for all his faults, he does turn the ball over sometimes, but he loves to sling it, and he will do that at 5.1 versus Tampa Bay. They'll let him throw it. They don't care at this point. So I think Minshew's a great value play if you're going to pay down at quarterback. You have Minshew as well, Garrett. Anything you wanted to add to Minshew?
Yeah, just Mr. Boomer bust. You may get 35, you may get 3. We'll find out. But I'm definitely going to play him in some. And I was just looking at DeVito, man, the Giants quarterback, man. He put up, 22 against Washington. If he put up 22 against Washington, man, Dak should murder him.
Yeah, it's not going to be right. They don't even have a real defense at this point.
Yeah.
They're just kind of running guys out there.
100%. All right, let's get to the tight ends.
Did somebody say tight ends?
All right, we all have the same elite tight end. I'm just going to mention him so we can save some time. Travis Kelce, play him every week if you want to. He's always in play. We'll just kick it off at the mid-tier, Tim. Pick one of your mid-tier guys you want to talk about.
We kind of all have the same guys, which is interesting because usually we'll switch it up. I'm going to take the guy that I shit on last week that I think is going to have a big bounce back week this week, and that's Evan Ingram. He has had 2 bad matchups in a row, and now he gets one of the best matchups against the Houston Texans, who are 31st against the tight end. So I think we just talked about Trevor Lawrence. If I'm making Trevor Lawrence stacks this week, I'm probably starting in the mid-range with Evan Ingram. And I also think he's very much in play for cash. I think one of the other guys we're going to talk about is probably going to be higher owned. We'll see what happens when we get to Sunday. But Ingram at 42 just looks like such a good value.
Yeah, he's been really good this year for sure. Garrett, talk about one of your mid-tier guys.
Well, you know where I'm going to go. Who that, baby? I'm going to go Taysom Hill, 5,000, man. I think with Carr banged up, I don't know what they're going to do yet with the quarterback situation 100%. We'll see what happens. But get back to Taysom Hill, Vulture and Kamara for the touchdowns. And, I think he can easily get value here and maybe boom a little bit with 20-plus points.
Yeah, I like that call. So I'm gonna take Kincaid versus Philly. Philly is dead last DVOA versus the tight end. He's 5.3. He now has 5 straight games. I think 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 5 straight games of double-digit fantasy points. Had a little bit of a down game against New Jersey. I'm sorry, the Jets, New York Jets. He only had 10 points there, but he still got the double-digit mark. And he's been getting the targets. He had 7 targets last week, 6 weeks before that, 11 the week before that. So he's definitely part of that offense now. He's having his little breakout season towards the end of the year. And at 5.3, I don't think he's too expensive yet for you to be able to pay him in this Philly, against this Philly team. So I like Kincaid a lot. The other guy we all 3 of us have here. So Tim, why don't you talk about the third tight end we have here, the fourth?
Yeah, Trey McBride, just play him every week, man. He is absolutely the number 1 guy in Arizona right now, and they can't take him off the field. He literally played 100% of offensive snaps last week, right? I think he also led the team in targets. He did with 7 targets. Like, he is their offense right now. Now, that being said, well, kind of spoiler alert, I do think it's going to be a bounce back game for Hollywood Brown. But I like the whole Cardinals passing attack, and I think McBride could be, the chalkiest tight end. I think it'll be the 3rd or 4th time he's been the chalkiest tight end on a slate, but it's for obvious reason, man. He's getting the volume, and DraftKings just has not raised his price enough.
Yeah, I was trying to look up because I only heard the limited thing. It came through on a notification about Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown. Looks like it's a heel injury. Do you think if he's ruled out for whatever reason, do you think that hurts or helps McBride?
I don't know that it probably impacts his volume too much, but I think if anything, it helps him.
Yeah.
Because if it was a wide receiver, I think they'd focus more on bracket coverage or double coverage. With a tight end, they're going to play the same game.
Yeah.
So I think it's basically the same, but we'll see. Obviously, it's Wednesday. Could go either way.
And it could be one of those, like, he has a heel injury. He's a veteran. Let's give him the day off, and he'll be back fine. And on Thursday and Friday to practice. So.
Exactly.
I had just seen it pop up on my notifications that he was limited today.
No, that's a good call.
All right, let's move down into the value tier here, Garrett. What do you got for your value tight ends?
Man, Jonnu Smith. Let's go. Ritter is coming back at quarterback. I just actually noticed that he was coming back, but he had a good connection with Jonnu Smith early in the season. He was targeting him quite often. 3,400 seems low to me for Smith, and the Saints struggle against the tight end position.
I do.
So I like Smith a lot.
Yeah, that's a good call. Tim, you have a guy that I liked last week, and unfortunately it didn't work out. He was stone minimum and did not work out, but he's got a much better matchup this week. Talk about him a little bit. Yeah,
I was going to say on this show last week, we said, keep in mind, if you play this guy, he may give you 1 point because he's playing against Cleveland. Exactly. He scored 1.7 DraftKings points, okay? We told you that was going to happen. Okay, now he gets one of the best matchups in the league against the Cincinnati Bengals. And because he had such a shitty week last week, he's still 2,900. So last week I said stay away from Pat Freiermuth. This week I think the Muth is Luth. 2,900, like we always talk about, you got to find some value. And I do like him, particularly just to fit in some of the guys we're going to talk about here in a minute. It's Wednesday. Value is always tough to find on a Wednesday. So right now it looks like the value's at tight end.
Yep, agreed. I had one more guy. It looks like Garrett had him as well. Cade Otton at 3.2 versus at the Indianapolis Colts. It is a tough matchup. The Colts actually look pretty good against the tight end, but at 3.2, he's still getting a ton of targets in the offense. We mentioned Baker Mayfield, how well he's playing, but Otton's getting between 5 to 9 targets a game at a tight end. That's only 3,200. I think he's still viable. He's in play. He won't give you those huge ceiling games. He did that 2 touchdown game, but that's the only 2 touchdowns he's had all season. But I do think if you're looking for some value, Cade Otton is definitely in play as well.
Yeah. One guy we didn't talk about, and I just want to mention him just because I've seen him popular on a lot of sites, is David Njoku. His volume has been insane. Last week with DTR, he had 15 targets.
Ooh.
So he's 4,100 this week. Yeah, it was insane. He went 7 for 56 on 15 targets. But week before that, he had 9 targets. Before that, 6 targets, 8 targets, 9 targets. So he's getting that almost Kincaid-like volume in a worse offense, right? But he's 4,100.
Yeah.
So I think Njoku could make an interesting GPP play if you say everybody but Kelsey fails and Njoku gets you 17 to 20 points, then he may be the guy that you need.
Yeah, good call. All right, let's move to the running back.
It's time for running backs. Running backs.
All right, so peek behind the curtain here. We have a spreadsheet that we all use, and we put all of the names on. We have elite tier, mid-tier, value tier, and I get to see what these guys put in. And I logged in, and I saw Tim's sheet, and I was like, Tim, I think you messed up because you had this guy in your elite tier, but he's cheaper than your mid-tier guys. Why do you have him in your elite tier? And I'll let you take it away, Tim.
Yeah, so I mentioned value looks like it's going to be really hard to come by on this slate. And so I think you're going to have to pay down into the mid-range at running back. And so, in my opinion, the most consistent running back over the last 6 weeks has been Rachaad White at $6,100. He gets a great matchup against Indianapolis, who I think are 24th to running backs. And last week, he played the same San Francisco 49ers we were just talking about, caught 6 balls on 7 targets and still managed a 17.8. Mm-hmm. And that was like a down week for him. He's getting a volume like an Austin Eckler or a Jahmyr Gibbs, but he's not being priced like those guys. So I don't know why DraftKings is keeping him so cheap, but I'm just going to take advantage of it. Rachaad White's probably my number 1 point per dollar play on the whole slate, particularly at running back.
Yeah,
that's a really good call. Sorry, Joe.
No, you're good. I was just going to say, just to reiterate the volume thing, I looked it up. As far as snap percentage, there's only 3 running backs with a higher snap percentage than Rachaad White this year. That's Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, Christian McCaffrey, yeah.
Saquon Barkley and Kyron Williams for some reason. That's it. And then it's Rachaad White, number 4. So that's right. He's getting the volume for sure. And you mentioned the passing work as well. And I feel like DraftKings gets too caught up in like yards per carry or something, right? Because I can't imagine what stat they're looking at to not increase his price. Yep, 100%. All right, we'll go back into the elite tier because you have a few elite guys there, Garrett, to talk about.
Yeah, Alvin Kamara, man, who dat? It's my guy. If Hill doesn't vulture the touchdowns, he's going to get to work regardless of who's in there at quarterback. I think they're starting to dump it off to him a little more in some screen passes. I like seeing that, getting him in space and get him loose. With Michael Thomas out, that should, equate to some more targets for Kamara. Regardless of where they line him up, he's elite, man, and he can get you a monster game anytime. So
and Clark's expected to play, right? I think that's huge for.
I think he is. Yeah, I think he's going to end up playing, man. I really do. And then
Jameis is not really a check down guy, but we know Carr is. So.
Carr is. Yeah, I think what was it? Kamara's first game back, he had 13 catches. I think that week.
Yeah. And ETN's been doing it all year. I've got him up there, and then maybe one of my favorite plays, man, is Jonathan Taylor. Yeah, his volume is just insane. He's getting back to old form. And he can beat any team, man. So I like him.
Good call. I only had one other guy, Saquon Barkley, who's had, I think, at least 19 opportunities over the last 5 or 6 games. He seems to just get it all in the ground.
He is their offense at this point.
He basically is.
Yeah.
The Patriots defense is tough against the run, but if you look up the DVOA versus pass catching running backs, they're actually 29th. Of course, Barkley's big games come through the pass, so I think Barkley at 7.3 in the elite tier is also viable as well. Let's move down into the mid tier, and we'll go ahead and hit the drop.
Lock it in.
And we're gonna give it a
Hold on, before you tell your lock of the week, I want to tell you that when I saw this on the sheet, I've been waiting all night to hear this drop.
Okay, here we go. All right, you can't make out what they're saying on the drop. They're saying King Henry, as in Derrick Henry versus Carolina, who is the worst team versus the run DVOA, second worst in points allowed. And I'm speaking into existence because I've actually traded to get Derrick Henry in a lot of my leagues for this.
Hember starting early, baby.
Yeah, for this exact stretch, because we got Carolina, we've got Houston Texans twice, who we know Derrick Henry owns the Texans. He's got the Miami Dolphins. He has the Colts, I think, on his schedule. But it starts with this game with Carolina. I think he's going to have a monster game at 6.4. We know Henry should be in that elite tier. He's had a rough season. But if they give him the volume that we know he can take, it's getting cold out. We know Derrick Henry likes it when it's cold. So, yeah, I think this is going to be the game that kind of propels him to have a very huge end of season stretch here. So at 6.4, I think Henry is way too cheap. And I'll be playing Henry in a lot of my lineups this week.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I actually considered him making my lock of the week as well because he is the most game script sensitive running back in fantasy. In games where they've been close, he's averaged 19 DraftKings points. In games where they've lost by more than 10 points, he's averaging like 8. Yeah. So Derrick Henry looks like an absolute smash in this game. Home, favored, playing the worst defense. I love it, man. It's Wednesday. I'm sure by Sunday I'll be locking in the guy I'm going to talk about here in a second. But, man, D. Henry looks good this week. Big dog, King Henry.
That just hurts after what he did to me Sunday, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to have a short memory in DFS.
That's right.
We talked about it a little bit. Kyron Williams is coming off the IR, and he will be back this week. Obviously, the Rams feel pretty good about it because they already cut Darrell Henderson. Basically, like, thanks, bro, but good knowing you. I think they signed him back to the practice squad, but that tells you that there's going to be no restrictions, right? And if they're worried about it, then they think Royce Freeman can pick up the slack. But Kyron Williams absolutely smashed Arizona earlier this year to the tune his last game with 24.8 DraftKings points. I think if he was been on the slate the whole time, he probably would be well over 7K. So he's also, the mid-range at running back this week is so stacked that I think that's where you're going to be living. I really do.
Yeah. And Kyron, like we just mentioned, he's one of the 3 guys that are in the top as far as volume goes. Granted, he hasn't played in a little bit, but he was getting, I think one of the games he played 100% of the snaps. And you just don't get that much from running backs these days. So I love that call. And you're right. They kind of gave Darrell Henderson. Thanks, guys. Thanks for holding it down. But peace.
Buddy.
You're out of here. Garrett, who you got in your mid tier?
Man, I love Pacheco this week.
There you go. That's a good call.
He was running so physical against Philadelphia, who we all know their front is just about impenetrable. And he just, every time he grabbed the ball, man, he's trying to score. I think against a weak Vegas defense, they can be run on. I like him a lot.
Yeah, Pacheco looked really good against, like you said, a very good run defense, a defense that we avoid most of the time when anybody's playing against him. And
it's true.
Pacheco looked really good against them. So I think he gets a nice little volume in here against a bad team. So I love him as well. Tim,
I want to say one of my matchup charts that I had this week showed Kansas City, Las Vegas gives up a ton of explosive plays to running backs. It's one of the reasons I was kind of on them last week. So I actually really like that call. So before I put on Rachaad White as my top play, the other running back I was considering as my top play was DeAndre Swift, a.k.a. Swifty. This is a guy I've played all year long since he got to Philly because his role there has been so secure. No matter what the game script is, they're finding a way to keep him involved. Like you said, in that game against Kansas City, he had 19.7 points. Against Dallas was a down game, 9.4. But in that game, he still got 20 touches, right? Game before that, 20 touches. Game before that, 18 touches. Game before that, 20 touches. His volume is insane. And Buffalo, that's how you beat them, right? You beat them in the running game. They give up a ton of explosive plays in the running game. The only downside that keeps him from being a top play is that if it gets to the 1, he's not going to get the touchdown, right? He has to score from beyond 4 yards, right?
Yep.
Or it's not going to happen. But that is literally the only downside on his resume. One thing we always talk about on this show is home favored running backs, right? That's where you see those big spike weeks. There are not many home favored running backs on this slate, right? If you look at the top guys, right? Kamara's on the road, Saquon's at home in a tough matchup, Etienne's on the road at Houston, Jonathan Taylor's playing the Bucks, right? A lot of these top guys are in tough matchups. So one of the first home favored running backs you come across, DeAndre Swift.
Yep, absolutely. I love it. And speaking of that, not that it's related to fantasy, but did y'all see the troll with Kelsey and Swift walking out together?
Yes.
Jason Kelsey and DeAndre Swift. That was pretty awesome. I love that.
That was great.
All right, that's it for the mid-tier running backs. Let's move down into the value tier here. And Garrett, you have one guy on your list that was mentioned in the chat here by Mickey. I want you to talk about Jerome Ford.
Jerome Ford, man, he's been solid. I think you can go there 5,600. The matchup's pretty good against Denver, who's been run on all season. I like him, man. He's been getting pretty good volume. 20 touches, 17 touches, 12 touches last week, but it was a slow game against Pittsburgh. So I think he bounces right back up to that, 15 to 20 range and can get you there.
Yeah, he was so frustrating last week because he had that touchdown earlier in the game, and then it was like he was stuck on 11 like the whole week. I mean, the whole game. It was like, come on, do something else.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think Ford's a great play. And Tim, you have the other guy.
Yeah, the only other guy I'm considering paying down for is Jaylen Warren. Last couple of weeks, he's been absolutely killing it. Matt Canada was fired this week for Pittsburgh. There's some belief that they're going to try and go to more of a run-based offense moving forward, continue to focus those guys. I do think that there is some Najee, possibly that he ends up having the game, but I think to anybody with eyes, Jaylen Warren is clearly the superior running back. And then the matchup is great, right? We always talk about Bengals give up the most explosive plays in the league. And the only way he really, we saw it in the game against Green Bay, right? If Pittsburgh can run the ball, they will run the ball. So they're playing against Jake Browning this week. So I don't really see how they're going to be out of this game, which means it should be another healthy dose for Jaylen Warren.
Yep, absolutely. You got 5 or 6 of his last 8 games have been double-digit points too. So that's a great price point. So I love that. Well,
last week he averaged 14.3 yards a carry because of that 74-yarder. But we always say, you can't take plays away. But even if you did take that play away, he still has a 15-point week, which is what you need from a 5,400 running back, right? So, he's got a ton of upside, but he also has a solid floor.
All right, let's get to the receivers.
And now, wide receivers.
And we will hit the double drop here.
Lock it in.
Tim, take it away.
All right, man. So if I had an FTN sheet and I had to pick my favorite wide receiver quarterback matchup this week, it is Stephon Diggs going into Philly. Philly has been the flowchart team for wide receivers all year long. Nobody has given up more wide receiver 1 performances than the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, Stephon Diggs, you're thinking, oh, Tim, he's had 2 bad games. Well, look who he's played against. He was in Denver, got shadowed by Patrick Surtain. Then he played against the Jets, got shadowed by Sauce Gardner. Now he's got James Bradbury and what's left of Darius Slay. I think Steph Diggs is going to absolutely eat in this game. And what shocked me is that he's going to be lower owned than A.J. Brown in the same game. Mm-hmm. So I like A.J. Brown, don't get me wrong, but I'm going to go ahead and go with the guy that I think's got the better matchup, and he's also cheaper and lower ownership. Give me some Steph Diggs.
I love it. And you had asked me pre-show, so I talked about CeeDee Lamb being the number 1 matchup, and then the number 2 matchup was Amon-Ra St. Brown. Number 3 is the guy I'm going to talk about, but the number 4 matchup at 84.1 was Steph Diggs. So to go to your point, he is on the sheet.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So yeah, great call. I love Stephon Diggs this week as well. Garrett, who you got for your elite?
Yeah, AJ Brown, man. I think he bounces back and has another killer game here. They're going to need him against Buffalo, if I'm not mistaken. Well, they I forgot about the Jets game, but Buffalo's been up and down this year, so AJ Brown's going to have a big game in this one against Diggs for sure.
Yeah, I think he's definitely going to be on a lot of my lineups as well.
Yeah, right.
He's in kind of the same boat, right? 2 bad matchups in a row. Now they're getting Buffalo, who's just not, that great of a defense on the back end.
Agreed.
Sure.
I'm telling you, this game's going to get 60 points. Like
Yeah.
if you bet over unders out there, just slam the over. Just put your whole, put the whole car note on the over, man. Because I swear there's going to be 60 points in this game.
Not the whole car note.
Tim, you got 2 more guys in your elites here. There, you want to talk about one of those 2 guys? You want to move down?
Yeah, I want to talk about Mike Evans. I talked about how I really like Baker this week. I've been playing Mike Evans the last few weeks. Last week he had a little bit of a down game against 49ers, but we talked about the outside wide receiver matchup is a little bit tougher. He still had 12 targets, right? This is clearly Baker's guy. So he is priced up at 7,400, but 2 weeks ago he had 29 points. He had another game this year at 32 points. There are, you're looking for the upside, right? When you're looking at these stacks, I don't think Evans is a cash play by any means, but 7,400, he saves you $1,400 over stiff Diggs, and he's still got a 30-point ceiling. So I actually really like Mike Evans this week. I'm going to try and fit him in, but I think I'm going to pay down for a guy that we're going to talk about here in a minute. The only other guy I had was Puka, and I'm just going to say real quick, I haven't made up my mind on whether I'm playing Puka yet. When Cooper Kupp was out, he was obviously like the best wide receiver in the league, but he's not, 100%. They've kind of changed his role a little bit. He's playing more outside. Do they move him back inside? I think there's a lot of question marks for somebody that's 7,400. So maybe Sean McVay comes out and gives us the game plan, and then we'll talk. But for right now, I don't know how I feel about Puka.
All right, good call. All right, I'm going to move down into the mid tier, and there's 2 guys that I have that neither one of you have that I'll talk about real quick so we can move through these guys. The first one, so I mentioned CeeDee Lamb being the top matchup. I mentioned Amon-Ra being number 2, and then the guy that was number 3 is the guy that I put on my sheet, and I didn't have him on my sheet originally. I went back and looked at the matchups, and I decided to put him on there strictly based on the matchup, and that's DeAndre Hopkins versus Carolina at 6.1. It's an 86.2 matchup rating. Donta Jackson is the cornerback that they have listed there. Obviously, they move him around quite a bit, so he won't always be on him. But Hopkins, has been sort of the apple of Will Levis's eye when he's had the time to throw the ball. Last week, he only threw the ball 17 times, so D-Hop did not have a good game. But I think he gets a lot more targets this week at 6.1. I think he's way too cheap. And the other guy that I have is Nico Collins. People have forgotten about him. He was injured for a little bit, came back last week, and of course, Tank Dell had the amazing touchdown catch that everybody's talking about. Collins is now cheaper than Tank Dell. Yep. He has the best matchup rating of the 3, according to FTN, and actually had plenty of volume last week. I think he had 11 targets, which I think either led the team or was tied for the team lead. So he's still getting the targets. He's just not getting the big flashy Tank Dell touchdowns right now. But I think Nico Collins, especially now that he's $500 cheaper than Tank Dell, is still in play as well.
It's a good call.
Tim, what you got for your mid?
Yeah, I'm going back to Tank Dell. That was the guy I was talking about a second ago. I really like Mike Evans, but I think Tank Dell has a pretty similar projection. He's $500 cheaper. He, as you talked about, he seems to be CJ Stroud's guy. And that touchdown last week, he really just kind of threw it to a spot and knew Tank Dell would be there, right? And that's really what you're looking for. It kind of, I don't want to put him on a level of like, Jamar Chase, but it feels like they have that same connection, right? Where he just knows where he's going to be. I talked about it on the show last week. He was one of my lock it in plays. He is 4th in the NFL in terms of targets when he has more than 1 yard of separation, right? CJ just looks up, is Tank Dell open? And if it's close, he just throws him the ball. So, I basically every week I say play Tank Dell. It's going to be like your copy paste, right? Keenan Allen for you is Tank Dell for me. If he gets to 8K, we can have that conversation. But until then, man, I'm going to keep playing Tank Dell.
I love it. Garrett,
did you see, by the way, they officially updated his name in the NFL to Tank Dell this week?
Did they really?
Yeah, in the official log, they had him as Nathaniel Dell, and this week he earned it. He's officially Tank Dell now.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I'm going back to the well with Adam Thielen, man.
I like that.
Since week 2, I think he's been averaging 10 or 11 targets a week, and he's going against Tennessee, who is a pass funnel team, and the quarterback there is going to have to target Thielen because they don't have much offense outside of that. So Bryce Young's going to have to go to Thielen early and often, and probably all game long.
Yeah, I like Thielen as well, and his price has come down a little bit, but yeah, I do like Thielen. He's surprised the hell out of me. Like, I thought he was getting up to the age where he was just going to fall off for the end of the season, but he's still doing his thing for sure.
Yeah.
Tim, we'll go back through, and you got a couple more guys there. Quickly mention the last few you got.
I'm trying to read that question in the chat, but it just keeps going.
It's way too much.
So I want to talk about Michael Pittman. And this is probably one of the plays that I put on the sheet and took off like 3 or 4 times because he has one of the best matchups on the whole slate against Tampa Bay. We talked about Jamel Dean last week. He got ripped apart by your boy Brandon Ayuk. Now, he's obviously not in the same league in terms of getting separation, but he is in the same in terms of the volume that he gets. And we know Gardner Minshew really only looks for 2 guys, right? He drops back and he looks for Pittman, and he drops back and he looks for Downs. Michael Pittman quietly has had one of the best roles in the league, right? Where he's consistently had last week 12 targets, 8 targets, 13 targets, 5 targets, 14 targets, right? So he's averaging more than 10 targets a week at 6,800, which I think makes him an excellent cash game play. But my question is, does he have the upside for tournaments? Upside for tournaments. So I like Pittman. I think he's a good cash game play, but Tank Dell is only $100 more. And that's my biggest issue here is like, okay, if you're deciding between the two, it's Tank Dell. If you're playing both of them, I feel like there are better plays. So that's my only thing for Pittman. But if you're doing a Baker stack, I think he's the best run back. And obviously you're going to have him if you do a Minshew stack.
Yeah, Tim's middle of the thing laughed there. I just got to call it out. So we have a question in the chat for those listening on audio or that can't see it. He basically gave us his entire roster for fantasy football and wants us to set his entire lineup. He's like, start 2 receivers, start 2 running backs, a quarterback, a flex. Who do I start? And I said, break it down smaller. You know who you're playing. Give us the actual sit-start question that you want to ask. And then he gets pissed off and goes, F you then, dummy. So, I mean, I could probably say that you're the dummy for coming to a show and asking a fantasy football question, but, it is what it is. Anyways, we will move on from that.
That's an all-timer, man.
It is an all-timer for sure. I love it. All right. Is there anybody else in the mid-tier we want to talk about before we move down to the value guys?
Yeah, we didn't talk about the Jacksonville guys. Oh, go
Christian
ahead.
Kirk, man. I'm going in on Christian Kirk this week. T-Law has kind of been going, Ridley one week, Kirk the next, and back and forth. I think this week's going to be a Kirk week. So, yeah, I like Christian Kirk this week, and he may or may not be in my stack of the week. You'll find out later.
There you go.
And you have Ridley there, Tim, so you think Ridley's back on track after last week?
I think it's interesting. I actually like Kirk better, and that's what I was going to say. But what I was actually going to say is that if I'm playing Trevor Lawrence, I'm only playing him in stacks. And I think what I'm going to do is it's going to be Lawrence and Ingram, and then I'm going to rotate Kirk and Ridley. But the matchup seems to go to Ridley. So I do like that call a lot.
Yeah,
good stuff.
The only thing I was going to say is Hollywood Brown. We mentioned it at the top. He does have the heel injury, so keep an eye on it. But it's a great matchup for him. 5,200. His price keeps coming down. He's had a couple of tough matchups, but he gets a much better matchup this week. He scored, I think, 30 against them in a matchup with Kyler last year.
Good stuff. And Matt is showing him how it's done. Nakua or Pittman week 12. Which one you got, Garrett?
I am going to go Michael Pittman.
Tim, what you got?
Man, I have these guys really close. I think I feel Pittman too. I don't know why, but I think it's going to be a Kyron game. They're just going to come back and play Kyron 100 times. So I think Puka's going to have a good game, maybe 7 for 70. but I think Pittman gets the touchdown.
Yeah, sweep it. I'm going Pittman as well. So 3 for 3. We're going Pittman here. All right, move down into the value tier, and I will kick it off here because I'm going to hit the drop on this one. We got the squeaky wheel. Deontay Johnson, of course, had some issues last week on the side of the sideline. Actually had to be pulled away, carried away by one of his teammates because he was in the face of one of his coaches. Then he had some choice words where he kind of avoided the question when they were asking about Kenny Pickett. Obviously disgruntled that he didn't get the pass. There was a whole TikTok showing the plays that he was wide open and Pickett never even had a chance to even look his way. So I think the squeaky wheel gets greased this week. The Bengals are third worst DVOA versus the pass. I think he comes out and gets targeted like crazy. And at 4.9, he is way too cheap in my opinion. So I'll be playing Deontay Johnson this week.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Let me be clear, though. The best Steelers TikTok video this week is when they're all walking into the locker room and Matt Canada is celebrating, we won, and Chris Boswell goes, yeah, but not because of you, though. Like, that was one of my favorite videos by far.
Yep.
I like the Deontay call. My guy this week, my pay down guy is Josh Downs. I talked about it in Minshew. This is the guy that he looks for. Tampa Bay has been getting absolutely killed by the slot, bottom 5 in the league. He's 2,000 less than Pittman, right? And I think that you're really going to need that money this week. So when I was scrolling through the slate, I was like, oh, Josh Downs right there. He's had multiple games over 10 targets, right? Which you never see for somebody under 5K, right? Let me pull this up here. I had it on my sheet. So he had a game of 12 targets. He had a game of 9 targets, 8 targets, 6 targets, 7 targets. So like he's getting volume. He gets a great matchup. I think he's my favorite pay down of the week.
Good stuff. I love it. And Garrett, I edited the sheet there. There's one guy that I want you to make sure you don't mention because he's my sick call. But
Roger. He's mine too, by the way, Geoff.
Raheem Shaheed, same one.
Raheem Shaheed, 4,300. Man, he's no Michael Thomas. Again, if Carr plays, he's going to see more targets down the field. We know he's, a deep threat at any time. He's one of the fastest guys in the NFL, I think. So he's a good solid play for cheap number.
Yep, I like Shaheed as well. Another one of my pay down guys I want to just mention really quick because there's a cool tool on FTN that I use quite a bit that shows sort of the spread of the offensive team where you got the receiver, the slot, and then the right and left, and it shows the grade matchup on each one of these 3 receivers. And of the receivers for the Buffalo Bills, the one that has the best matchup is right in the middle in the slot with Shakir, and he is quite a bit better than the other one. I think they're giving up 18 points to the slot position at 3.6. Shakir has been coming on strong lately. Actually, Eagles give up the most points to slot receivers so far in the NFL. And it's the 6th best matchup grade overall for slot receivers this week. So Shakir at 3.6 is definitely worth mentioning.
I was kind of mad we weren't all over that one, man, last week.
Yeah.
Looking back, it was right there.
100%. And then let's see, is there anybody else?
Now that we're talking through this, I could see this being a week where the mid-tier and low-tier receivers get you there, and then you fill in the lineup around that.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be kind of stars and scrubs a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, we'll move down into the defense. I want to mention Kyle Phillips. He was my sick call last week. Unfortunately, Will Levis went through 17 passes, so he didn't get any targets, but he's still 3K. I think Levis throws more than 17 passes this year, this week. So Phillips could pay off this week if you wanted to risk going with a 3K guy. I just want to mention him because I think he could have had a better game last week if he had gotten the opportunity.
Yeah, the only other guy I had was Pop Douglas. Good volume for New England, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, I missed him. Yeah, good call at 4,400. All right, let's get to the defenses.
Defense.
All right, Tim. So I was doing my sheet, and I noticed you had all the same defenses as me, so I'll let you talk about all the defenses. Nice.
I love that. I think it's a pay down week. I talked about it a couple of times this show. It's going to be tough to find value on the slate. The cheapest defense, which this is also different because we're used to having $2,000, $2,100, $2,200 defenses. The cheapest defense on the slate is the Texans at $2,600. So immediately, that's my first thought where I want to go. Home favored 2,600. The other team I like is the Eagles. In the event that I'm wrong about Josh Allen, he does give a lot of turnovers as well. Home favored matchup, so I like them. My GPP defenses are the Raiders. Max Crosby is willing that team, him and Antonio Pierce, every single week. Even in weeks they've been blown out, they still had some positive values because of sacks. And then this week, we always talk about who's playing the Giants this week, right? Who's playing the Giants and who's playing the Commanders? Well, the Commanders aren't on this slate, so who's playing the Giants? It's Bill Belichick. And who always seems to have the number of rookie quarterbacks? Bill Belichick. Yeah. So I think there's a great case to be made for the Patriots at 3,200. I don't know that you can get there in cash, but in GPPs, that's probably one of my favorite defenses.
I love it. And there is one defense, Garrett, that you have there that I did not have, and you get to call out.
You get to do it.
You get your favorite phrase here.
Who that? Oh man, it's just going with the Saints, man. Ritter's coming back. Atlanta doesn't know what they want to do. They can't figure out their offense. Coaching staffs, it probably needs to be changed, if you ask me. But the Saints have a solid defense. Their secondary is great. Atlanta could really struggle here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Love that call. All right, let's get to our stacks.
Goingfor2.com's weekly stack report.
All right, Garrett, kick it off here with your stack.
Man, my stack, I'm going Texans. I'm not missing again this week. I'm not changing it this week. I'm going to go Stroud with Tank Dell. I'm going to run it back with Christian Kirk. And then, Geoff, I'm going to play your running back that you've got over there sitting pretty. So go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and mention my stack here. I have Pacheco. I have Pacheco in the Chiefs defense. I know that we talked about defenses. We didn't mention the Chiefs, but I think you can stack these in GPPs. Chiefs defense has been legit. I mean, they're the reason winning some of these games this year. And I think with Pacheco there as well, you can stack the defense in a pretty good matchup as well. So that's my stack of the week.
That's a really good call.
Tim, what you got?
Yeah, I told you I really like Josh Allen. So no surprises there. I'm going with Josh Allen, Steph Diggs. If you want a double stack, I like it with Kincaid, and then bringing it back with DeAndre Swift.
Yep, good call. That's gonna be a popular stack, but I think it's popular for a reason.
Yeah,
good call. All right, let's get to our sick calls.
And now the sick call of the week.
All right, so since me and Garrett have the same sick call, we'll let you go first, Tim.
Yeah, is it another week we get to light the Dortch? This was one of our favorite cheap plays last year, Greg Dortch. Now, last year we were playing him because Rondale Moore was hurt. This year we're playing him because Michael Wilson is hurt. Last week Michael Wilson sat out, and he went, I think, 7 for 76. So obviously this is very dependent. 6 for 76 on 8 targets. So this is obviously dependent on Michael Wilson being out, but they only raised his price to 3,300. So if he's going to get 6 to 8 targets for 3,300, I'm going to light the Dortch with Greg Dortch.
Yeah, and then if for some reason Hollywood Brown is out too, then definitely I think he's.
100%.
Garrett, since this is your boy, I'll let you call it since we have the same guy.
Yeah, man. A.T. Perry, 3,200 for the Saints. With Michael Thomas out, he's stepping into a good role. I think he's going to get more targets this week, especially if Carr plays. The defense won't notice him out there because he's a no-namer. And he did pretty good against Minnesota, man. 2 receptions, 38 yards, and a touchdown. He scored 11 points. If he gets that again, he gets you value at least, if nothing else. So,
and he played 84% of the snaps too, which is very important. So I think
that's huge.
Being on the field is a big part of scoring points. You can't score points if you ain't playing.
Yeah, as soon as Thomas went down, it became the A.T. Perry show. So that tells you they view him as that backup.
Yep, absolutely.
Lynn Bowden or whoever did not get a real increase. Lynn Bowden, whoever.
Yeah, yep.
It was A.T. Perry.
Yep, A.T. Perry was the guy. He's the number 3 there now with MT on IR. All right, fellas, that wraps the podcast up. I want to thank you, Garrett, once again for coming on. Finding a way to make this work. Being at the hotel and all that good stuff, getting on the show, and obviously happy Thanksgiving and all that good stuff. I know you won't be with your family tomorrow, unfortunately, but we're glad that you were able to make it on the show.
Man, Geoff, Tim, big shout out to you too, man. Thank you. And all the listeners, man. Look around you tomorrow. Be thankful and thank God for what you have and the blessings around you, man.
100%, man. 100%.
Yeah, I'll echo Garrett on that one, man. I'm thankful for this show. I'm thankful for all of our fans that show up every week, everybody that gets in the group every week and interacts. You guys make this show what it is. And most of all, I want to thank everybody who took the time to donate to Geoff's charity. Obviously very worthy. Help them kids, as I always say. Get them some toys for Christmas. So yeah, everybody, whether it was $5 or whatever you gave, thanks to each and every one of you. And Happy Thanksgiving. Whether you're with your family or not, I hope you all have a great day and at least get to watch some football.
Absolutely.
And I meant to mention it earlier. I forgot to mention how much we raised. So I set the goal at $1,000 because it's what we did last year. We absolutely crushed it. We raised $1,900. We almost got to 2,000. So thank you to everybody in the chat that did donate. And I hope that we have a great tournament tomorrow. I'll be sending that belt out to somebody after this weekend. So if you're in the tournament, good luck. Good luck for getting second because I'm getting first, which is at my house. All right. For Garrett, for Tim, I'm Geoff. Good luck this weekend, and everyone enjoy your holiday weekend.
Go Pack, go!
Who that?